Hi, I'm Dr. Jessi Upshaw. I'm honored to be here today as we continue the Meet the Majors series. I'm here today to share my journey with you. I'm going to kind of go back and forth between just my face and maybe some visuals to walk us through the journey, but we all have a story to tell. I appreciate you for letting me share mine today. Uh, it has been a winding way from when I was young to where I am now. What I thought I wanted to do, what I tried to do, what I ended up doing has changed some along the way. You can see on the screen here whether these might be your current majors or focuses, or maybe it doesn't have anything to do with what you want to do. I bet you can find something in there for some common ground for my story. Psychology, criminal justice, behavior science, special education, higher education. You're all here. Higher education is applicable to what you're doing. So let me tell you my story. Like I said, I am Dr. Jessi Upshaw. I am lead faculty here at the UAGC, Master of Arts in Special Education. We call it the MACE program for fun. And we'll get down to more about that a little bit later down the road. As we go on this journey today, I want to pause here and there for some road stops. And the one that comes to mind when I look at all of these areas that I wanted to focus on while I developed what my career path was going to be, the key term that comes to mind, stopping point, is pivots. I've been hearing that word a lot lately, and it's very important to have that flexibility and that ability to pivot to what you might want to do. When I started out, I was sure I was going to do one of two things. I wanted to either be a psychological profiler for the FBI, more on that later, or work with individuals identifying as autistic or individuals with autism. And I didn't know a whole lot about either one when I left high school. And so I started out my journey in psychology and criminal justice. And as I gathered along that path, as you'll hear later today, I had to pivot a few times to get to where I wanted to be. Let me back up because we're starting the story. I'm sorry. We're starting the story in the middle rather than starting it in the beginning. And I think it's nice to jump to different places in a story, but I think it's very important to go back to the beginning and really emphasize that I would not be where I am if there wasn't someone who came before me trudging a path. So let me talk a little bit about the path that came before me before I talk about why I chose my path. In the middle there, you see a photo that is actually my photo, and those are pictures of my grandparents and my parents. Both sets of my grandparents met during the Second World War, and three of my four grandparents were actually serving in the U.S. Army at the time of the Second World War. They paved their path and set in motion an interest in serving the country, and both of my parents followed suit. My dad, right out of high school, enlisted in the Navy. And he ended up being, he went through his basic training out in San Diego, and he ended up being stationed in Mumford, Tennessee. And he was a corpsman, a Navy corpsman, working in one of the hospitals there at Mumford, in Mumford, Tennessee. Worked in the ER and met many friends. And one of them ended up being my mother. She took a different path. She left high school and went straight into nursing school. While she was in nursing school, she was called to enlist in the Navy. And so in her first year enlisted in the Navy, she was actually in nursing school. She graduated from nursing school, took her boards, and not a week later was off to Rhode Island to go through officers training, so that she was then a nurse in the Navy and an enlisted officer at that same hospital where she was stationed in Mumford, Tennessee. Without my parents meeting in the armed forces, I would not be here. I say that often. And their desire to continue in the field of nursing was strong. So when they both got out of the Navy and left Tennessee, they wound up back in Wisconsin, which is where I was born and raised, and where my mom had been born and raised. And they both were still on different educational paths. My mom had her nursing degree, but she wanted to go back and get her bachelor's in nursing. And my dad wanted to get his degree in nursing because he had been a corpsman and he wanted to go ahead and continue on and become a nurse. And so both of my parents got their bachelor's degrees in nursing back in Wisconsin, the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and they were the first on both sides of my family to get a college degree. I say this because it's important. Those that come first in those paths are really paving the way for those that come after. It was never a question growing up whether I would go on to find whatever degree it was that I may want to pursue, whether that was a vocational degree or a four-year degree or beyond, because I had seen my parents. That was their path that they had taken, and it was an inspiration. Whether you are the first in your family to get a college degree, or whether you are, following the path of others before you, that is an exciting moment. It actually set me on the path to be the first in my family to get a graduate degree and later a PhD. And it was an inspiration, and I hope of those that came before me. And I hope that I am leading the way for all of my family and community members to follow their path and know that whatever they may want to do is achievable to them. So recognizing the inspiration of those that come before you and how it paves your path to where you want to go is really an important piece of the journey, right? We are not just on our own out here in the world. we are those around us. We are our network. We are our community. So my path followed a semi in order way of going about things. I did graduate from high school and decided to leave the state of Wisconsin and headed down to Texas, which is where I'm at now. I continued some of the college courses that I had started while I was in high school as a dipping my toe in the water, an opportunity that my high school offered to us at that time. And I decided to continue with some of my basic courses like chemistry and government and all of that at a community college while I got my bearings in Texas and decided where I may want to go next. And so I actually was at Central Texas College, or CTC, down near Fort Hood. If anyone's familiar with that area of Texas, it's between Austin and Dallas. Actually, it's between Austin and Waco, but it's that I finished out some of my core courses there at the community college and decided that I wanted to pursue that goal of either being a psychological profiler for the FBI or someone who worked with individuals with autism. And so I wanted to study psychology and criminal justice. And I was deciding between Austin and Arlington, which is near Dallas and Fort Worth. I opted to go to Arlington, and the rest is history. I wound up in North Texas instead of Central Texas. And I finished up my bachelor's degree in psychology with an emphasis in, with a minor in criminal justice. And at that point in time, every experience that I had, whether that was the face-to-face instruction, whether that was online instruction, whether that was instruction at a community college, a large class, a small class, really did shape who I was. I got to know my instructors. I made a point to go talk with them during office hours. And I came to realize that while I may really want to go to the FBI and do that profiling piece, getting a degree in psychology and criminal justice might not be enough. I might have to look a different route. At the same time, I had a professor, Dr. Jim Kopp, who really brought me into the world of behavior analysis and psychology and showed me that there were opportunities, even as an undergraduate, to work with children who are on the autism spectrum. And really make a difference in their lives. And so I got to work doing that while I was finishing my degree, and my life was changed. I knew while the FBI sounded cool, sounded like it had a lot of potential. I'd seen lots of movies and shows about it. Really, my calling was going to be working with people and working with people who are working to meet a goal, and autism, that area of research and support just really spoke to me. What science was available to support people who wanted to expand that field, and I was hooked. So my road stop for us here in our journey, or my journey that we're talking about today, is to carry every experience with you, because you just never know where that point that you're going to go and take a turn and find what it is that calls you and ends up being your passion and what you want to do. So don't be so stuck in what you think you want to do that you miss those exciting exits that might bring you somewhere new and exciting. So I said, I was called, I was hooked, I knew what I wanted to do, but no journey is without bumps in the road. And I would be remiss if I didn't talk about some of those hurdles that come about no matter what situation you're in. Some are more significant than others. Some people just encounter little speed bumps. Some people encounter detours, sometimes blockades, and sometimes complete road closures. And, everyone is on their own journey. It affects each person differently. But just, recognizing that there are going to be bumps in the road, balancing work, balancing paying for education, were some of my bumps in the road. I was really far away from family support when I was going through my undergraduate and graduate work. After I had graduated with my degree in psychology, I continued to work with families to support children with developmental disabilities, and autism spectrum disorder was still my main area of focus. I became a board certified associate behavior analyst so that I could use the science of behavior to support students. And I worked in homes and I worked in treatment centers, and I was just amazed every day. I learned something new from my students, and I tried to make an impact every single day, but I was still far away from family support. So when I decided to go back to get my master's degree, I still was on my own trying to balance out that working, paying for school, and being far away from family. I did go to the University of North Texas, and I got my master's degree in special education with an emphasis in autism spectrum disorders and behavior analysis. And I sat for a behavior analysis certification exam to become a board certified behavior analyst at the master's level, and continued to work and try and impact those students. In the meantime, I got married and was taking a look at what my next steps were on my journey. And I realized I could only make a certain impact when I was working one-on-one with students. And so it was time to pivot again, another detour. I realized I could make a bigger impact if I went into the classroom and I utilized my degree as a teacher rather than just as a therapist or a consultant in a smaller environment. And so I had that pivot, and I left my position at the treatment center to teach in the classroom, where I was for almost 5 years, really focusing in on making an impact in the classroom, for individuals with autism spectrum disorders, as well as all students. And then had that moment of realizing that, well, this is great. I'm impacting each class at a time. Every year I get a new group of students, and there's an impact, but there are certain teachers who feel like they may have wanted more, and they aren't seeing as much impact in their classrooms. Really where the biggest impact is in higher education, where you get to work with the teachers who are in the classroom, or those that are pre-service that are about to go into the classroom, or those that are in the private sector like I was at treatment centers and wanting to work with individuals outside of the traditional public education system, but still making an impact on education. And so I felt my calling to continue on and enroll and get my PhD. Again, remember, my parents were the first in the family to get their bachelor's degree. I was the first in the family to get my master's degree, and here I was, inspired by those around me, my family and my students, to go on to that next level, to get my doctoral degree. And my undergraduate came with a lot of challenges of balancing life, work, school. My graduate degree came with a lot of challenges balancing my life, work, and school. So you might have guessed it, a PhD came with a lot of challenges in balancing life, work, and school. At one point during my doctoral degree, I found out that I was expecting my first child, and that just changed the world altogether as well, because that added additional things in my life that were priorities. So another pivot, shifted around and find ways to balance to make sure that everything had my attention when my attention was needed. What didn't have a lot of attention was sleep. Self-care was something that has taken a while to master, and I did not have it mastered while I was in graduate school. So those bumps in the road, those detours it meant that I took a little bit longer to get my degree done than I expected. I originally thought I would be done in 2 or 3 years. It took me 7. I worked my hardest and I balanced what I could, but I reached out to my instructors and I asked for more time when I needed it. I took a fewer classes when I needed to, and I really kept my finish line in mind, but knew that I had to live in the process. And so, like I said, those detours, bumps or blockades might be little or large depending on what you're at, but when you keep your mind on that goal, don't be afraid to pivot and ask for help. But the biggest thing that came from that was building a network of people, coworkers who knew what I was balancing when I was in school, family members who would reach out even when I was far away, building a friend network, staying in close contact with my cohort of fellow students, because they really did know what I was going through, and my instructors, my advisor, everyone at the college or university that I was attending at the time. They were my go-to resources to be sure that I asked questions and made sure they knew who I was, so that if something came up, we had that opportunity to discuss it. It wasn't the first, hi, nice to meet you, I need you to do this for me. I had that opportunity to really know my instructors and keep them as part of my network, not only while I was in school, but as I went through. There are additional roadblocks and blockades that occur. I remember it took me 7 years. In those 7 years, I had 2 children. I went through a divorce. I was a single parent for quite some time. Having that network in place meant that I could continue to go forward and be a part of all of those priorities and balancing my home life, my work, and my school. We're not going to end on the blockades and the challenges. They're there. We've all felt them. You're hearing me say this now. I am now a higher ed instructor. So your instructors have been there. they have had blockades and roadblocks of their own. And I promise you, we understand. We have been through it. We have been in your shoes to an extent. Everyone's journey is different, but we've been in your shoes as a student and understand that everyone has those various roadblocks. But never forget the moment. Never forget what you're working for. That is a picture of me with my doctoral advisor. And the day I graduated and the day I got to call myself Dr. Jessi for the first time. And I felt the exact same thing when I walked across that stage as a high school student. I felt that exact same thing when I walked across the stage with my bachelor's degree in psychology and criminal justice. I felt that proud the moment I stood up there and was provided with my academic hood with a master's in educational psychology and special education from the University of North Texas. And this moment right here that you see this photo on the screen, that was the moment that I reached my at this point, my most recent degree. I haven't given up whether or not I will go for another, but at this point, this was the moment, and I will never forget any of those moments when I reached my accomplishment. It was not just something that's on paper. It's not just something that comes to you, in the mail after you've graduated. And I do still have it hanging right here, but it's lived experience, and it's something that no one can ever take away from you. It's always yours. Once they hand you that degree, it's yours. It's accomplishment. It's not just something on paper. So here we're going to pause and remember the exit from our road trip to pause and remember that why you're doing what you're doing stays at the center, and then plan what's next. So keep your why at the center, keep working towards that goal. When you achieve it, enjoy the moment, and then plan what's next. Oops. And for me, like I said, it's been a winding journey. My professional path that kind of steered right along with my academic one. I've worked in a variety of facets in the field of education. Those of you that are studying education, whether it's early childhood education, whether it's special education, again, I have the graduate program in special education here at UAGC, whether you're studying psychology, whether you're studying another degree program that is not one that is in the human services field, like I mentioned, or the educational field. It's the same. Your professional journey goes right along with your educational journey, and being a lifelong learner means that we continue to learn as we wind along our professional path. Mine has taken me from an in-home therapist for children with developmental disabilities to treatment center team leads and a therapy position and a consulting position, a researcher in the field of education and autism spectrum disorders. It's taken me into the classroom to be a special education teacher with an extra certification that I think I forgot to mention along the way. I had to stop and get an alternative certification in the program that I was studying here in Texas at the University of North Texas. And then moving on to becoming a professor, a lecturer, an adjunct professor, which means, I wasn't part of the university faculty team, but I taught for the university. And I did that at the University of North Texas, the University of Texas at Dallas, and then at Niagara University, which is a private university in New York for a while. And then my life changed again as I was brought on here at UAGC. And I've been here since 2016, working in the Master of Arts in Special Education program. And I've been the lead faculty for the program, getting a chance to do things like this, talk to students and talk with other faculty members and really lead the program and teach as many students as I'm able to impact in our program here at UAGC since 2018. So I am so honored to have been here today and shared my journey with you. Just remember, everyone is on their own path, and there are going to be bumps in the road. But if you remember some of those road stops we made along my journey, just be prepared and be prepared to pivot Recognize who's paved the path before you and pave your path so that those that are watching you follow. Carry each experience with you and learn from it, to use that experience as your resource. It's almost like your packed suitcase on the journey. Each thing you put in there is going to help you along the way. Make sure you're building your network. Keep in mind that's a roadmap to how you get resources, the people around you, the systems that support you at work or in your family or here at the university. Just continue to build your network. Remember why you're doing what you're doing, and then be ready once you've achieved your goals to plan your next destination. Thank you so much for having me today for Meet the Majors. We'll see you next time.